Hi there. Believe it or not, there was a time when nobody thought to make up stories for children. Children were born and lived most often in poverty without any money, and as soon as they were able to do things, they were forced to help their parents. But sometime about, I'd say maybe about 200 years ago, people started to realize that children enjoyed stories and that people should write the stories down. Remember, there was a time when people didn't have books. People couldn't afford books. But now we know that there are books and they have stories and people can read them. So there was a time when two brothers who were in Central Europe, who grew up in Central Europe, that's Germany essentially, but it wasn't called Germany then, they made up stories. There were the Grimm brothers, who made up fairy tales in Germany. And then there were another two brothers, Hans Christian Andersen, who made up stories for children. And Hans Christian Andersen was in Denmark, in Copenhagen. But I've been looking for a book. I knew I had it, but I couldn't find it. And now I found the book that I had bought for my children that have some of the fairy tales written by the Grimm brothers and Hans Christian Andersen. And I'm going to read you one of those stories today. One of the most famous stories is called Rapunzel. And I will try to explain some of the words if they get a little bit hard to understand. So once upon a time there lived a man and his wife who had long wished for a child, but in vain. It never happened. And it so happened that at the back of their house was a little window which overlooked a beautiful garden full of the finest vegetables and flowers. But there was a high wall around the garden, and no one went there, for it belonged to a witch of great power, of whom all the world was afraid. One day when the wife was standing at the window and looking into the garden, she saw a bed filled with the finest vegetables, and they looked so fresh and green. That's a vegetable garden. And it looked so fresh and green that she began to wish for some, and at length she longed for it so much. This went on for days, and as she knew she would not get the vegetables, she pined away and grew pale and miserable. The man, her husband, was uneasy, and he asked, "What is the matter, dear wife?" "Oh," answered she, "I shall die unless I have some of that beautiful green vegetables to eat that grows in the garden at the back of our house." The man, who loved her very much, thought to himself, "Rather than lose my wife, I will get the vegetables, cost what it will." So in the twilight he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, plucked hastily at a handful of vegetables, and brought it to his wife. She made a salad at once and ate to her heart's content. She liked it so much, and it tasted so good, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as she had before. If she was to have any rest, the man was to climb over the wall once more. So he went again in the night, and as he was climbing back, he saw the witch standing before him, and was terribly frightened as she cried with angry eyes, "How dare you climb over into my garden like a thief and steal my green vegetables? It shall be the worse for you." "Oh," answered he, "be merciful rather than just. I have only done it through necessity. My wife saw your green vegetables from our window and became possessed with so great a longing for it that she would have died if she could not have some to eat." Then the witch said, "If it is all as you say, you may have as much of the green vegetables as you like, but on one condition. The child that will come into the world must be given to me. It shall go well with the child, and I will care for it like her mother." In his distress, in his anxiety, the man promised everything, and when the time came and a child was born, the witch appeared and gave the child the name Rapunzel, which is the same as the green vegetables. Then she took it away with her. Rapunzel grew to be the most beautiful child in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the midst of a wood. It had neither steps nor door, only one small window above. When the witch wished to be let in, she would stand below and cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard the voice of the witch, she would undo the fastening of the upper window, unbind the plaits of her hair, and let it fall down 20 feet below, and the witch would climb up by it. They had lived thus for a few years when it happened that the king's son came riding through the wood. He came to the tower, and as he drew near to the tower, he heard the voice of the witch he heard the voice of Rapunzel, singing so sweetly that he stood and listened. It was Rapunzel. In her loneliness, she tried to pass away the time with sweet songs. Remember, she was by herself in that tower. The king's son wished to go into her and sought to find a door in the tower, but there was none, so he rode home. But the song had entered his heart, and every day he went to the wood and listened to it. Once, as he was standing there under a tree, he saw the witch come up, and he listened while she called out, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Then he saw how Rapunzel let down her long hair and how the witch climbed up by them and went into her. And he said to himself, Since that is the ladder, I will climb it and seek my fortune." And the next day, as soon as it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the king's son climbed up by it. Rapunzel was greatly terrified when she saw that a man had come into her, for she had never seen one before. But the king's son began speaking so kindly to her, telling her how her singing had entered into his heart, so that he could have no peace until he had seen her himself, that Rapunzel completely forgot her terror. When he asked her to take him for her husband, she saw that he was young and beautiful, and she thought to herself, "I certainly like him much better than old Mother Gothel, the witch." She put her hand into his hand and said, "I would willingly go with thee, but I do not know how I shall get out. Each time thou comest, bring a silken rope, and I will make a ladder." When it is quite ready, I will use it to get down out of the tower, and you shall take me away on your horse." They agreed that he should come to her every evening as the old woman, the witch, came during the day. Now the witch knew nothing of all of this until one day when Rapunzel said to her unwittingly, "Mother Gothel, how is it that you climb up here so slowly, and the king's son is with me in a moment?" "Oh, wicked child!" cried the witch. "What is this I hear? I thought I had hidden thee from the world, and now thou hast betrayed me." In her anger, she seized Rapunzel by her beautiful hair, struck her several times with her left hand, and then grasping a pair of scissors in her right, snip, snip, she cut, and the beautiful locks lay on the ground. The witch was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel and put her in a waste and desert place, where the young girl lived in great woe and misery. On the evening of that very same day on which she took Rapunzel away, she went back to the tower and made fast the severed lock of hair to the window clasp, the lock. The king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The witch let down the hair, and the king's son climbed up. But instead of his dearest Rapunzel, he found the witch looking at him with her wicked, glittering eyes. "Aha!" cried she, mocking him. "You came for your darling, but the sweet bird sits no longer in the nest. She sings no more. The cat has got her and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will see her no more." The king's son was beside himself with grief, and in his agony he sprang from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns on which he fell put out his eyes. He wandered blindly through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and doing nothing but lamenting and weeping for the loss of his dearest wife. He wandered for several years in this misery until one day he came to the very same desert place where Rapunzel lived with her twin children. She had borne him a boy and a girl. At first he heard a voice that he thought he knew, and when he reached the place from which it seemed to come, Rapunzel recognized him and fell on his neck and wept. When her tears touched his eyes, they became clear again, and he could see as well as ever. He took her and the children to his kingdom, where he was received with great joy, and there they lived happily ever after. Nice story, eh? Remember that line, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And remember, it came from the fairy tale written by the brothers Grimm.